Dramatic developments unfolding, and let's begin with some important new developments in the attacks on U.S. facilities in both Cairo, Egypt, and Benghazi, Libya. U.S. sources now tell CNN the attack in Benghazi was actually planned in advance, and the perpetrators used a protest outside the U.S. consulate in Benghazi there simply as a diversion. 4 Americans died, including the United States ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens. Our foreign affairs correspondent Jill Doherty has been working her sources to get a better idea on exactly what happened. Our senior international correspondent Nick Robertson is monitoring the search for who's responsible, and our Pentagon correspondent Chris Lawrence is keeping tabs on the U.S. military's response to what's going on as well. Let's go to Jill first. She's watching what's going on. Jill, what's the latest over at the State Department beyond the heartbreak of a top U.S. diplomat, 3 others killed?
Right, Wolf. Well, just in a few minutes, we are expecting an update, a briefing on the background by senior officials here at the State Department. But for now, this is what we know based on the conversations and what we are hearing from U.S. officials. Tuesday night at the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, a complex and highly dangerous situation. Outside, an anti-American protest. Then, a group of heavily armed militants, approximately 24 of them, launched an attack firing rocket-propelled grenades.
The attack in Libya appears to be a very coordinated military-style attack. This was not a demonstration gone bad. This was a clear, targeted, planned event.
According to senior U.S. officials, that ignited a fire inside the consulate. American and Libyan security personnel, officials say, were forced to fight on 2 fronts. The attackers on the outside, the fire inside. Diplomatic sources are beginning to piece together what happened next. Officials tell CNN Ambassador Chris Stevens in Benghazi on a short visit from the capital, Tripoli, along with Sean Smith, a 10-year veteran of the State Department in Libya on temporary assignment, took refuge in a safe room along with a lead security officer. But the room became filled with smoke. The officer left the room, they say. When he returned, Smith was dead. Ambassador Stevens was missing. One official says Stevens and possibly others were trying to escape to the roof. The ambassador, he tells CNN, ultimately succumbed to smoke inhalation. In the chaos, consulate staff attempted to enter the building to try to find and save the men. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton praised the Libyans who, she said, helped fight off the attackers and carried Ambassador Stevens' body to the hospital.
This was an attack by a small and savage group, not the people or government of Libya.
At this point, State Department officials believe the attack was planned in advance, but do not believe Ambassador Stevens was directly targeted. Nicholas Burns, a former top State Department official, tells CNN U.S. diplomats are facing an incendiary situation in the Middle East.
The cruel irony here is that the United States is well regarded in Libya, and there's a moderate government in place, and this is clearly the actions of an isolated and very small but very vicious terrorist group. And so we've got to protect ourselves from those groups, and we've got to go after them.
And Wolf, as I said, we're expecting momentarily a briefing background here at the State Department. There are a lot of details. Everyone that we talked to says that it was a very, very complex, almost chaotic situation, fighting on the outside, fire on the inside. And so we expect to have more details as we go along.
And so far, we've only been told the names of Chris Stevens and Sean Smith. The other 2 Americans, they have not released their names yet. Is that right?
Yeah, as far as we know, Wolf, that is correct. They were security officials. Not
U.S. Marines, though?
No, we understand were not Marines. They were security personnel.
All right, let us know what happens at this background briefing you're about to get, and you'll update our viewers. Stand by for that. Jill Doherty, let's go to Nick Robertson now in London for more on who may have been behind these attacks. Nick has spent a lot of time in Libya, as all of our reporters, as all of our viewers know. Nick, as you heard, initial reports indicated a mob got out of control, but now it's looking more like a pretty sophisticated assassination plot that was in the works for a long time. What are you hearing?
Well, we still can't say with certain knowledge precisely who was responsible. We do know that last year the head of al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, sent a top Libyan jihadist trusted lieutenant from Afghanistan to Libya to set up an al-Qaeda camp. We know from Libyan government officials whom I met with in June there that they've been monitoring those camps, but they don't have the power, they don't have the security structure to close those camps down. When the consulate was targeted and attacked on June 5th this year, the group left behind flyers saying that this was a revenge attack, the United States drone attack in the Afghan-Pakistan border region, killing al-Qaeda's number 2 at the time, a Libyan, Abu Yahya al-Libi. Al-Qaeda never confirmed that killing until yesterday when Ayman al-Zawahiri, Al-Qaeda's leader, issued a video statement saying that Abu Yahya al-Libi was dead and calling on Libyans to attack and kill Americans. So there is a correlation here that Al-Qaeda perhaps has definitely established camps and perhaps has had a role in this particular attack. It's not possible to say that, but we do know that they are operating in that part of Libya, Wolf.
And yesterday when I spoke to Mike Rogers, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, he told me he has been briefed that there is an al-Qaeda presence not only in Libya but in Tunisia as well. How significant, unclear right now, but it sounds like that al-Qaeda operation in Libya is very, very real indeed. All of this suggests to me, Nick, that the attack yesterday on the U.S. ambassador and other Americans on the 11th anniversary of 9/11 was not necessarily simply a coincidence. What are you hearing about that?
It definitely doesn't seem to be a coincidence, Wolf. I mean, the indications point to the fact that this group has been prepared. The concern has been, we've been reporting this since the beginning of the year, even naming some of the al-Qaeda members. One of them a former Gitmo detainee who are inside these camps. Those names are confirmed to us by Libyan as well as other officials. They have space to operate inside Libya because the Libyans can't close them down. Libyan officials say that U.S. drones have been monitoring those camps at least since June this year. But the problem that faces the Libyan authorities, they say, is that they can only sort of been able to monitor the activity of these groups, and these groups have grown stronger, not just in the east of the country, but spreading throughout the region. And that's been al-Qaeda's strategy, to try to take advantage of this Arab Spring where there isn't strong security, put down roots. And the analysts have been telling us that the attacks they feared were going to be al-Qaeda not attacking Libyans inside Libya, but attacking Western interests, not just inside Libya, but using Libya, because it's close to Europe, as a base to attack Western interests inside Europe, Wolf.
Explains why the U.S. now reducing dramatically its diplomatic presence, both in Benghazi as well as in the capital of Tripoli. Nick Robertson, thanks very much. Our Pentagon correspondent Chris Lawrence is joining us now. He's got the latest on how the U.S. military is responding to this unfortunate situation in Libya and the potential for a whole lot more trouble. What are you learning, Chris?
Well, we can now confirm that U.S. Marine Quick Reaction Force has landed in Libya, and they are now on the ground in Tripoli. Also, the Pentagon has notified some American troops around the world that in the coming days, they may be moved also to American embassies in different parts of the world to try to beef up security for the American diplomats working abroad. The U.S. has sent a fast reaction force of 50 Marines to Libya to, quote, help with security and possible evacuations if needed. Insurgents attacked this same U.S. mission in Benghazi back in June. And now a former U.S. counterterrorism official says new countermeasures will have to be put in place.
The location where the diplomatic facility was not your normal embassy with heightened security.
Fred Burton is a former special agent with that same diplomatic security service. He says the Marines will work with agents to coordinate a security plan for Americans still in Libya, especially around Benghazi.
The agents with the diplomatic security service do not work in a vacuum. They would be working in tandem with the host government to to make sure that the route of travel for the U.S. ambassador is secure.
Other former U.S. officials say Marines are normally posted in a capital like Tripoli with the main U.S. diplomatic mission.
There aren't that many Marines in the world that could cover every single post. And in the end, again, Benghazi was the part of the country where the rebels were most supportive of American involvement in Libya.
A senior defense official confirms the U.S. has been flying surveillance drone missions over Libya for some time, and that Libyan officials were aware of the flights. Now, he says, that mission will be more focused on finding the specific insurgent cell responsible. The information will be passed on to Libyan officials who would presumably go after them on the ground. But Libya's leaders don't completely control the east.
The government has the possibility to count on some of the militias or on some of its forces to attack a cell, but they do not have the strength to counteract a large group like the Salafi.
Dr. Mesran says he expects that insurgent group to launch attacks on Libyan officials in an attempt to bring down the government.
The killing of the U.S. ambassador is a huge event, but may not be the last one.
So again, to bring you up to date, the U.S. Marines Quick Reaction Force is on the ground there in Tripoli, and the Pentagon is in deep discussions with the State Department and the White House, trying to determine what other assets may be needed. Ships, planes, even some U.S. troops that are stationed overseas have been notified that they could be moved to U.S. embassies to try to meet the president's goal of trying to bolster security around the world.
Yeah, but those drones are really intriguing to me, Chris. I assume to you and a lot of folks at the Pentagon. As you know, President Obama has authorized targeted killings by drones in Pakistan, certainly in Afghanistan, in Yemen. The question is, will similar drone attacks against al-Qaeda or other terrorist elements in Libya be undertaken now, especially since the president has declared publicly justice will be served against those who killed those 4 Americans?
That is the big question, Wolf. Right now, what we have from the Pentagon is a continuation and a focusing of these surveillance drone flights. Those are very different than some of the attack drones that have been used, obviously, in parts of Pakistan and other parts of the world where the administration has gone after senior al-Qaeda figures. But that would be a change, going from strictly surveillance to an actual attack on an insurgent cell in Libya.
I wouldn't be surprised, but we'll see what happens. Thanks very much for that. The president says justice will be served. The attack in Libya coincided with demonstrations against a crude anti-Muslim film produced right here in the United States. Our own Brian Todd tracked down one of the people who knows the filmmaker.